One of the dirtiest fucking players in the NBA ever, history. His little short little mailbox looking like carry ass.
Yeah.
And he's dirty as hell. He's a dog. He's a demon.
I think Vladdy was a ringleader of that. It was never...
Hold on. Is it true that Vladdy smoked cigarettes at halftime in the locker room?
I seen him before a game. The bathroom stall is this high. His head is over the top. So I go and use the bathroom. He's in there like, I said, Vladdy, you smoking a fucking cigarette?
Jared Dudley said he smells like absolute garbage. And honestly, that might be putting it nicely. When a former NBA player goes on the radio and reveals which teammates had the worst hygiene in professional basketball, you know things are about to get disgusting. Dudley did not hold back. He named names, told stories that will make your stomach turn, and exposed just how bad things can get in NBA locker rooms. We are talking about millionaire athletes who refused to shower, spit tobacco everywhere, and wore the same dirty clothes for months. This is not just gossip. These are verified stories from multiple players who lived through the smell. Let's break down the 5 players with the most shocking hygiene in NBA history. Adam Morrison is where this story really begins. When Jared Dudley appeared on Washington, D.C.'s sports radio station, the host asked him point blank who his most disgusting teammate ever was. Dudley did not even hesitate. Adam Morrison. The answer came out instantly. Morrison was the 3rd overall pick in the 2006 NBA draft. He was a college basketball legend at Gonzaga. Everyone thought he would be a star in the league. Instead, he became famous for something completely different. His hygiene was apparently terrible. According to Dudley, Morrison never took showers after games or practice. That alone is hard to believe for a professional athlete, but it gets worse. Morrison also had a chewing tobacco habit that he could not control. He was constantly spitting tobacco juice everywhere, in locker rooms, on benches, during team meetings. It was disgusting. On top of that, Morrison wore the same 3 polo shirts all year long. Not different versions of the same style. The exact same 3 shirts over and over again, without washing them properly. The craziest part of the Adam Morrison story is what happened with Gerald Wallace. Wallace was Morrison's teammate on the Charlotte Bobcats. One day, things got so bad that Wallace literally had to force Morrison to take a shower. Think about that for a second. A grown man, a professional athlete, had to be physically forced by another grown man to bathe himself. Dudley told this story with complete disbelief in his voice. He could not understand how someone could let themselves get to that point. The fact that teammates had to intervene shows just how serious the problem was. Dudley called Morrison by far the worst and most disgusting teammate he ever had in his entire career. That is saying something when you play in the NBA for over a decade. Multiple media outlets picked up this story because it was so shocking. A top draft pick, someone who should have been a franchise player, instead became the poster child for terrible hygiene in professional sports. Before we go any further, I want to hear from you. Which of these stories has surprised you the most so far? Drop a comment below and let me know. Also, if you are enjoying this video, hit that subscribe button. We dive deep into NBA stories you will not hear anywhere else, and your support helps us keep bringing you this content. Now let's talk about a player whose hygiene might have actually been a strategy. Drazen Petrovic was one of the greatest international players in NBA history. He was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. He was a deadly shooter and an incredibly fierce competitor. But according to some of his opponents, he had a secret weapon. He smelled terrible. Reggie Miller is an NBA legend himself, and he has said many times that Petrovic was his toughest matchup. Miller even called Petrovic his nemesis, but it was not just because of his scoring ability. Miller said that Petrovic smelled like he had never taken a shower in his life. The odor was so bad that it made guarding him almost unbearable. Miller described wanting to strangle someone just from the smell alone. That is not normal trash talk. That is genuine disgust. Miller has told interviewers that Petrovic never showered before games. He would show up to the arena and go straight onto the court without washing up. The implication is clear. Petrovic knew exactly what he was doing. He was using his body odor as a defensive tool to keep opponents away from him. Vernon Maxwell, another guard from that era, backed up everything Reggie Miller said. On the All the Smoke podcast, Maxwell joked that he would rather guard Michael Jordan than Petrovic. Think about how insane that statement is. Michael Jordan is considered the greatest basketball player of all time, and Maxwell said he would prefer that matchup over dealing with Petrovic's smell. Maxwell described how even after a game was over and Petrovic had finally showered, the smell would still be on you. It would stick to your skin and your uniform. You could not get rid of it. During the same podcast conversation, both Miller and Maxwell laughed about how bad Petrovic smelled. They said teammates would literally beg him to take a shower after games. Petrovic tragically died in a car accident in 1993, so he is not here to defend himself or explain his habits. But the stories from his opponents are too consistent to ignore. Multiple players from different teams all said the same thing. Petrovic smelled horrible, and it seemed intentional. If you are trying to get any advantage you can on the basketball court, maybe making yourself smell so bad that defenders defenders do not want to get close to you is actually genius. Disgusting, but genius. Vlade Divac is another international player who made a huge impact in the NBA, but he also had a reputation problem. Divac was known for smoking cigarettes constantly. This was not something he tried to hide. Teammates complained that Divac smelled like an ashtray during games. The reason was simple. He was smoking cigarettes right before tip-off and even at halftime. Michael Thompson, who played with Divac on the Lakers, said Divac would light up cigarettes in the locker room. He barely showered, and when he got on the court, he smelled like a smoking lounge. Imagine trying to play professional basketball while smelling like you just walked out of a casino. That was Vlade Divac. Mike Bibby, who played with Divac on the Sacramento Kings, told a story about walking into the locker room bathroom, finding Divac in the middle of smoking a cigarette. This was during halftime of an actual NBA game. Divac was sneaking smokes during intermissions like a high school kid hiding behind the gym. Divac himself tried to downplay his smoking habit when people asked him about it. He claimed he did not even smoke a full pack of cigarettes per day. He said it was only about 10 cigarettes, which he apparently thought was reasonable. But the smell told a different story. Everyone around him could tell he was smoking way more than he admitted. The lingering odor of tobacco was always on him. In the health-conscious NBA of the 1990s, having a player who smoked cigarettes was almost unheard of. Most athletes are obsessed with their bodies and their performance. Smoking destroys your lung capacity and your endurance. But Divac did not seem to care. He kept smoking, and his teammates kept complaining about the smell. Opponents could smell it too. When you are running up and down the court guarding a 7-footer who reeks of cigarettes, you're definitely going to remember that. Divac's smoking habit became legendary, and not in a good way. Ronny Turiaf is not a household name like some of the other players on this list, but when it comes to smelling bad, he apparently earned his place. Amari Stoudemire, a former All-Star who played with Turiaf on the New York Knicks, was asked directly on the Dan Le Batard show if Turiaf was really the smelliest player in the league. Stoudemire did not dodge the question. He said confirmed, confirmation granted. There was no hesitation. Stoudemire went even further and called Turiaf the 1A of locker room odor. That means Turiaf was not just bad, he was at the very top of the worst smelling players in the entire NBA. When the host asked Stoudemire who might be second place, Stoudemire laughed and said Boris Diaw was a close runner-up. He called them 1A and 1B. Diaw is another French player like Turiaf, and apparently they both had similar aromatic reputations. Stoudemire even admitted that he tried not to get too close to these guys on the court because the smell was that distracting. It is unclear exactly why Turiaf smelled so bad. Was it poor deodorant choices? Was it his diet? Was it just a lack of showering? Nobody knows for sure, but the fact that multiple players singled him out means it was a real issue. Kevin Love also apparently joked about Turiaf's odor, which shows that this was a running gag around the league. Being known as the smelliest player in the NBA is not an award anyone wants to win, but Turiaf earned that title in the eyes of his peers. He was a high-energy, likable bench player who brought a lot of enthusiasm to his teams, but he also brought a strong personal musk that nobody could ignore. Kurt Rambis is the final player on this list, and his story is a little different. Rambis was a key role player on the Lakers during the Showtime era of the 1980s. He was known for his blue-collar work ethic, his iconic goggles, and his shaggy hair. But according to Magic Johnson, Rambis also had a serious hygiene problem. In Magic's autobiography, My Life, he revealed that Rambis refused to wash his practice uniform for an entire week. Rambis would show up to practice every single day wearing the same sweat-soaked jersey and shorts, day after day, without washing them. By the end of the week, the smell was overpowering. His teammates struggled to stand next to him during huddles or drills. The stench became unbearable. Magic joked about it in his book, but you can tell it was a genuine issue. Rambis was dedicated to keeping his so-called lucky practice gear, and that dedication came at the cost of basic hygiene. The Showtime Lakers were supposed to be glamorous. They played fast-paced, exciting basketball in Los Angeles, one of the most image-conscious cities in the world. But behind the scenes, Kurt Rambis was showing up to practice in week-old crusty workout clothes that made everyone around him want to gag. It is hard to imagine how his teammates put up with it. Maybe they tolerated it because Rambis was such a hard worker and a good teammate in every other way. Either way, the story of Rambis and his funky practice attire has lived on in Lakers lore. It is a reminder that even championship teams have to deal with gross locker room habits. The fact that Magic Johnson felt strongly enough about it to include it in his autobiography shows just how memorable the smell must have been. These 5 players all made their mark on the NBA, but not in the way they probably hoped. Adam Morrison refused to shower and wore the same dirty clothes until teammates forced him to bathe. Drazen Petrovic used his body odor as a weapon to keep defenders at bay. Vlade Divac smoked cigarettes before games and at halftime, leaving a cloud of tobacco smell wherever he went. Ronnie Turiaf became known as the smelliest player in the league, and Kurt Rambis refused to wash his practice gear for entire weeks, making Lakers practices unbearable for everyone around him. These are not just random rumors, these are stories that came directly from the players who experienced them firsthand. Jared Dudley, Reggie Miller, Vernon Maxwell, Amare Stoudemire, and Magic Johnson all shared these stories publicly. What is interesting about all of this is how it humanizes these players. We often think of professional athletes as superhuman. They are stronger, faster, and more talented than the rest of us. But stories like these remind us that they are still just people. Some people have bad habits. Some people do not care about hygiene as much as they should. And some people are just flat out disgusting. The NBA is full of incredible talent, but it is also full of human beings with flaws. Jared Dudley pulling back the curtain on locker room life gave fans a rare glimpse into what really happens behind the scenes. It is not always glamorous. Sometimes the toughest opponent a player faces is not the guy defending them on the court. It is the teammate standing next to them who has not showered in 3 days. The question is whether hygiene should matter more in professional sports. These players are making millions of dollars. They have access to the best trainers, nutritionists, and facilities in the world. There is no excuse for showing up to work smelling terrible. In any other profession, that kind of behavior would get you fired or at least reprimanded. But in sports, especially in the locker room culture of the NBA, it seems like these things get laughed off or ignored. Maybe that needs to change. These 5 players have secured a dubious place in NBA history as the kings of locker room funk. So, what do you think? Should teams enforce stricter hygiene standards, or is this just part of the culture? Do you believe these stories, or do you think they are exaggerated? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the grossest topics in NBA history, smash that like button and subscribe for more content like this. We cover the stories that other channels will not touch, and your support means everything. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.